It's the main event challenge. Anik.
The time is most definitely now.
Florian.
I finish fights! I'm going to do everything possible to win.
The main event challenge. The John Anik and Kenny Florian Podcast.
All right, so 46 apiece going into UFC 250. Big week for our guy Ian Parker on social media at Ian Parker MMA. 9-5 the final. You guys had 5 dissenting picks. Ian went 4-1 on those fights. So the Duck feeling himself a little bit this week. Now, most of the betting favorites came in across the board at UFC 250. Like if you parlayed all 5 favorites on the main card, that was a winning ticket. So perhaps some dogs are going to bark this weekend. We also point out KenFlo did change his co-main event pick from a Sunsao to Garbrandt during fight week. So it's 55-51. 3 picks today. It's UFC Fight Night I versus Calvillo. First one at bantamweight. Merab Dvalishvili minus 360 and Ray Borg is plus 300. So, Ian, if you're looking for Merab to get some respect for his efforts, for his strength of schedule, he's getting it from Vegas. What do you think about the price and Merab against Ray Borg?
Price is a little high, but I think that also comes in based on Ray Borg just losing to Ricky Simone, who can be considered somewhat of a similar fighter. Merab is an absolute takedown and cardio machine, and we just saw that that's not someone that Ray Borg does really well against, and it's confusing because Ray Borg is an excellent grappler, but with the momentum off Aljo on that in that team, I love Merab in this position. I think it's a great name to get on his resume as a win, so I'm going with Merab here, absolutely.
Yeah, KenFlo, hard to do much better than Aljamain Sterling as your primary fucking training partner if you're a bantamweight in the UFC right now. Ray Borg, and you know this, Kenny, because you called a lot of his early fights. His 7th pro fight took place in the UFC. He was 6-0 when he made his UFC debut in 2014. Yeah. So he's got a lot more UFC experience. 12 times in the UFC. Of course, he fought DJ for the belt back in 2017, but he also fought Ricky Simone just 26 days ago. And Kelleher looked pretty good against Cody Stamann with that quick turnaround. What do you think about Borg making a quick turn, and do you feel like he's as up against it as the odds suggest, Flo?
You know, I think for Ray, he has struggled with his weight in the past. Obviously, with this kind of quick turnaround, I don't think that's going to be a factor here. I thought he looked pretty good in his last fight. Yes, he lost, but it was very close. I thought he landed some excellent combinations. His striking has improved a lot over the last year or so. I do think he's a dangerous grappler as well. Is he going to beat Merab here? I'm not so sure. I think, that quick turnaround and him having, yes, it was a good fight against Simone, but it was a tough fight. He definitely took some damage. He gave some, but he took some as well. I think that may come back to haunt him a little bit in this fight against Merab as well. I like Merab by decision here.
Yeah, that was a hard 15-minute fight. I mean, I love Borg's fearlessness in taking the risk. And I think the fact that he's won 2 of 3 allows him to take that risk, even though he is coming off a loss. It would only be 2 in a row. But if he loses this one, right, then there's a whole lot of pressure on him in his next fight to not lose 3 in a row. But that is one Albuquerque tough dude, and he's got mouths to feed, and he's certainly a fighter's fighter. All right, co-main event in the UFC middleweight division. A lot of heat on this one. I will set it up as quickly as I can. Marvin Vettori, minus 220. Karl Roberson, plus 180. We'll need the round and the method, by the way, Ian, as well. So Vettori had a fight scheduled against Darren Stewart March 21st in London. Flies to London. Show gets canceled. Then he and Roberson were supposed to fight April 25th, I think, in Nebraska. That one gets postponed. Then it was May 13th in Jacksonville. The fight was still on after Roberson misses weight, but his body didn't cooperate thereafter. He was hospitalized. The fight gets called off. Vettori goes nuts at the host hotel, and I think rightfully so, by the way. And now this Saturday, June 13th, it shall be done. Ian Parker, Roberson plus 180, Vettori minus 220. Who do you like?
I think if that video of the hotel didn't happen, that price would probably be more like minus 195. I think it's the first time Vegas raised the odds based on some dude's fucking rage. Look, I think Marvin Vettori is a special fighter in this division. I think it's somebody that probably hasn't talked about it a lot. And his performances, he keeps getting better. Cardio is not an option. His combinations are there. I love his IQ in the cage, his angles. I think he's just a very smart fighter. And even though I guess he is an emotional guy, this will be a test whether we see if that happens in a negative way towards him, because Roberson is one hell of an athlete. Talk about a guy that almost put away Teixeira in a situation that not many, obviously, as we saw Glover fight against someone like Anthony Smith, doesn't happen too often. I still like Vettori here. I think he's one of those future guys that I see going to the top. I'd love to see him and Adesanya fight at some point in the future, just because I think he fought Adesanya really early in Adesanya's UFC career, and he did well. I like Vettori here. I don't like it at minus 220, though. I got to be honest. That's a little higher than I'd like against a guy like Roberson, but I do like Marvin here.
KenFlo, Marvin Vettori's won
decision.
2 in a row.
By decision.
All right, by decision. So Vettori's won 2 in a row since that split decision loss to Israel Adesanya, Kenny. Roberson on the other side, good athlete. He was a good baseball player. He's won 2 in a row as well. What do you think? Roberson the dog or Vettori the favorite for you, kid?
Jeez, this is a little bit closer, a closer fight for sure. I think that, Ian pretty much nailed it. I think that Vettori needs to keep his emotions in check here. Roberson as well, for that matter. But Vettori is huge for the division. I think he's going to pressure him. He's got a good chin. I see Roberson probably getting tired in and around the third round. Let's go with third round TKO for Vettori.
Third round TKO for Marvin Vettori is the pick to click for KenFlo. And one thing, too, I just want to say, guys, I don't make picks in this space, obviously, or anywhere, but Ray Borg at plus 300 in our scoring system, because that is a 4-point winner. I'd probably just fucking take a flyer on him, even though I understand the challenges that are up against him and from a strength perspective and having fought recently. But to me, in our scoring system, I am surprised at plus 300 that neither one of you was willing to pull the trigger here.
Well, here's the thing. One, Ray told me if I ever pick against one of his guys, he'll disown me. So just based on that alone, I can't do it.
Right.
And two, you know what? Normally, to your point, listen, Borg is fought the best of the best, literally. I just really don't like him fighting someone like Merab with the cardio and the takedowns and just the forward aggression after fighting someone in Simone that was tough. Otherwise, to your point, it's a value play for sure.
Yeah, and now you got a 4-point lead, so you're not in a position where you have to chase points, at least right now as we sit here on the 8th of June. All right. Main event, we're going to have it be led by Team Florian this week. It's Jessica I minus 115, Cynthia Calvillo minus 105. Flo, we'll need the round and the method of victory. So Calvillo, an ever so slight underdog here, moving up to 125 pounds as she faces the division's #1 contender. So both women missed weight for their last fight. Calvillo was 4.5 over for her draw with Marina Rodriguez. I was fucking 5 over the flyweight limit for her win over Viviane Araujo, even though she looked great in that fight, Kenny. What do you think about the main event here?
Jeez. Well, I think Calvillo's definitely going to be the better grappler. There's no doubt about that. I think Jessica has more experience on the feet, probably a little bit sharper with her boxing. For Calvillo, I think she needs to get her wrestling in order. If she's been doing her job, doing her homework, she should be coming in here with some sharp takedowns where she can really take advantage of Jessica. I think that Calvillo will be able to find a way to get this fight to the ground. I see her getting the win. Let's go with second round submission.
Round 2 submission for Cynthia Calvillo for KenFlo. Jessica Ian has won 4 of 5. That followed a 4-fight losing streak. Of course, the only loss in there, that vicious head kick courtesy of Valentina Shevchenko. So a pretty good bet historically to go the distance. She's done so in 8 of her last 9. We're scheduled for 25 minutes here. Ian Parker, need a selection on the main event, kid.
Do I be a dick and just tail Kenny's picks for the rest of the year and coast? Nah.
You pick before him too often, so you can't do that.
We could change him during the week, but no, I'm kidding. I would never do that. That's no fun. This is an interesting pick. Obviously not the people's ideal main event here, and I'm very curious to how this 5 rounds goes for someone like Calvillo. We haven't seen her do that yet. Kenny's got probably the best point out of all of this. The biggest difference here outside of the height, I believe, is going to be the wrestling and grappling from Cynthia. But we just don't see her utilizing it that much. And you can go back to her fight against Courtney Casey, where she was fighting a taller, predominant striker who now we've seen turn into a little bit of a submission specialist as well. She was throwing a lot of haymakers, she wasn't really finding her way in. That distance really threw her off. I think she's had time to work on that. I do think is not used to fighting someone maybe as aggressive. And I think that Kenny's point here, this is a hard pick. This really is, because I do think it's going to go to a decision. I don't think either one's going to take the other out. I just don't see the power there. And I's last, win, she didn't fight. That opponent wasn't near Cynthia Calvillo's level, in my opinion. That's a big factor, too. That was kind of a prospect that I thought was rushed up a little too quickly against a veteran. So I'm going to also take Cynthia here. I think she needs to go back to that wrestling route. That's where she got to where she was so quick. It was a good prospect that everyone was looking at. I like Cynthia by decision.
And she's pumped to not be cutting down to 116 pounds. And what an opportunity for Calvillo in what is a thin division, respectfully, at least at the top. She's fighting the number one contender in her UFC flyweight debut. So, you know, this division didn't exist when Calvillo made her UFC debut. If she beats Jessica, she becomes the number one contender. Might be fighting Valentina inside of a year, which is crazy to think about. All right, well, now that Team Anik has the lead, and we kind of got to determine the punishment. So we do want to hear from our Anik and Florian podcast listeners. So the loser of the 2020 main event challenge has to do something that is determined by the winner. Now, I have to pay off that bet, but Ian has said he is going to join me in whatever that endeavor is. So at Anik Florian Pod on Instagram or Twitter, and we'll let KenFlo and Cody Merrow maybe come up with what the final decision is going to be. But any suggestions were welcome. I mean, Ian, I think the Power Hour has some legs, just because I know if KenFlo had to drink 7 1/3 beers in an hour, he'd be fucked.
Dude, one beer, I'd be done.
I know. Well, you and me both. KenFlo and I have low alcohol tolerance. Let's just put it out there. Ian, I mean,
you were impressive at your charity challenge. So I think you're playing that a little too close to the cuff there. Actually, I'm going to call complete bullshit because you had like 7 pineapple tequilas. Your brother had like 3 chicken wings, and he's the one that fell through a table on his own.
That's right.
So
that's right.
I swear to God, that was true, Kenny. John was in the corner. I'm watching Jan Blachowicz versus John Gray, and a glass breaks. John's like, "What happened?" I'm like, "Your brother fell through a table."
Oh, dude.
Kenny, you're doing a fucking shoey, and then you're following me on Instagram.
I do think that the Instagram follow maybe would be part of it, and there would have to be some language that he couldn't unfollow you. I think that's all good stuff. But we will push that to the listeners and see if we get anywhere. If you want more content from Ian, it is at Ian Parker MMA. KenFlo don't want that Instagram content, folks. But if you do, it's at Ian Parker MMA on Instagram, and I'm following. Ian's one of my good friends, so I'm following.
Dude, Kenny likes all my videos and pictures because all it is reposts of you fucking guys. So of course that's why he likes it. You know, if it's something just me by myself, nothing. Hey, I got Ray Longo retweeting my tweets. We're like a reunited family again. Kenny.